comments to access@telus.net. We are not Shaw.
Hello, welcome to Access TV. I'm Angela Jung. Now this is a volunteer community television show promoting our friends and neighbors. And one of our friends is joining us today. His name is Kevin Lee. Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, Angela, thanks for inviting me to your show today.
So today we're going to chat about the My Stories for the head tax families. So remind our viewers, what is this project about?
Okay, well, the project is about the having our youth, the younger generation of the head taxpayer, most of them would be the grandchildren or even great-grandchildren generation, to develop an understanding of what the grandparents have gone through, like the impact of the head tax on the family, there's the negative aspect, and there's also certain positive aspect of it. And so it's a struggle that they, for example, have in China, when growing up in a single-parent family, or when they come over and then starting a life as a new immigrant, and then bring up the children, and how the third generation or the second generation, how they integrate into the Canadian society.
Sounds like there was a lot that you were trying to promote here with these stories. So looking back at these submissions, what was the overall impression?
Oh, for most of the youth, they're very positive about their experience, like growing up in Canada. And for many of them, this is the first opportunity of them exploring their roots, so to speak. And because I think part of the reason is the Chinese is a firm believer of, if you have nothing good to say, don't say anything. For example, my father is a taxpayer, and so is my father-in-law. But they very seldom talk about the difficulties, what they've gone through. And the most they really would have said is, oh, time was hard, it was difficult, and that was about it. You know, it's only on certain occasions that they would, very, very little detail. And in certain aspect, it's very frustrating. And especially one of my interests is in genealogy. So it's trying to trace my roots and so forth, and could almost have no information from them at all. But looking at the project, and it's very heartening to see the amount of research that our young writers had gone through, and that they've sat down and talked to their parents, talked to their grandparents, and having the facts and presenting it in a very orderly and positive manner. And they certainly express a lot of pride being a Canadian. Okay, so in other words, whatever they had gone through, their parents had gone through, or their grandparents had gone through, did not affect their outlook or their prospect of being a Canadian. Even though all these writers, they talk about the redress, the apology, Prime Minister Harper issued in June 22nd, 2006. It was not an inclusive one. Most of them, their grandparents were not survivors. It's they were excluded from the redress. But yet, at the same time, they accept the fact that the Canadian government had done something towards that end, even though their grandparents, again, were excluded from the redress. Because the fact is that when the Canadian government first introduced the head tax, the Chinese were excluded, were discriminated against by the mere fact that they were born Chinese. It's something that they have no control over. And then in 2006, when the government issued a redress, again, their grandparents or their grandfather, great-grandfather, again, were discriminated against. They were excluded from the redress because they do not inherit a gene to give them longevity, that they would have to be 120.
Now, Kevin, I'm going to interrupt you right there. So for our viewers who may be a little bit confused by what you're saying right here, can you take us back a little and tell us about what do you mean by how the redress doesn't include everybody?
Okay, basically what happened is that by redress is we are looking for an apology from the Canadian government for creating, for separating families, husbands and wife, because the Canadian, just because they could not afford the $500 head tax per person. And then in 1923, the Canadian Parliament passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, ironically on July 1st. And from then till 1947, Chinese were not allowed to enter Canada. There's so basically, even if somebody was willing to pay the $500, they still could not bring the wife over or the children over.
And you were one of these children
Well,
who were not allowed to be brought over.
Well, no, basically I was born after they repealed the act. But and by then my father was 50. So basically, I'm in age where his grandchildren should be. And so I came over in the late 50s.
And how old were you?
I was 8.
Okay.
Okay, and so in a way, I grew up in Canada also. Okay, but then certain things I remember when I was going to school in Hong Kong, like Father's Day was very dreadful because all my classmates on Monday they come in and they talk about what they do to their father. I had nothing to say because my father was not there. And then when I came over, like my father was almost 60. Like certain things, for example, like playing ball with him, going to the park, it's out of the question. I mean, he was just a bit too old to do that, especially those days. So, I mean, there's certain boys. And given the fact that he passed away when I was 13. So basically, he was not there when I graduated. He was not there in my wedding.
Now, Kevin, I can see that you're very shaken
no,
up
okay,
by
never
this.
mind, I'm sorry.
No, it's
yeah, no, but
absolutely
like,
fine.
so there's certain things that we're not there. But we're not asking for the government. It's not the money we're talking about. You know, basically it's just a refund of the money, the $500 the Canadian government collect under unjust means. Okay, so that's what we're asking for. We look say one paper, one refund.
I know that for you personally, this is very important for this full redress, not just this partial redress that occurred in 2006, but this full redress. Right. And evidently, because you've experienced growing up in a single parent household, that this is why it's so important. And so seeing all these youths who submitted these essays, did it also give you some sort of hope that this sort of situation is not going to be thrown on the back burner, that people are revisiting it?
Well, hopefully, yes, but unfortunately, we're dealing with politicians. Let's not get into politics. But unfortunately, sometimes they do use it as a mean of vote getting.
I'm sorry, Kevin, but I think we are running out of time. And so can you please direct our viewers to where they can read Our Story?
The website is ccncourstories.wordpress.com.
So again, the website is ccncourstories.wordpress.com.